by sharing our stories, I think sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
But as you know, when we're around other at-risk youth, sometimes our stories make them know that they're not alone, that there is someone that actually understands what they're going through. And I'd love to get your perspective on, you touched on sports and, you know, going through that team setting and now being in a part of a team on a bigger scale. I want to hear your experience about how important sports were and how important they can be to people that are either at-risk youth or just in helping build confidence in youth, and how you carried that on, the same principles that you carried on into the role that you're playing today.
I'll share a story with you. So I had just moved to Prince George, and I got a knock on the door, and I was in my office, got a knock on the door, and it was this guy that was kind of grubby, and my staff said, "Mr. Doherty or Todd, there's somebody at the door that they want to speak to you," and I said, "Okay." And so in comes this guy, and he kind of smelt, and he was grubby, and anyways, he comes in and he says, "I understand you're a goalie," and I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "I understand you coach," and I said, "Yeah, I've only been in Prince George at this point for a short period of time," and I said, "Do you want me to put on a goalie clinic for you or something like that?" He goes, "No," he goes, and he slaps his card down. He was an inspector or a commanding officer of one of the RCMP. He was undercover or general duty, I guess, is at that. But he said, "I'm the president of Prince George Minor Hockey, and you're taking a team. It's Team Teal." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "Your first practice is Tuesday." And so I got this team of cast-offs, and I quickly understood that these were people that no one wanted. These are players that no one really wanted, and because they didn't come from wealthy families, or they didn't have, there might have been a single income family that only had a mom or only had a dad at home or what have you, or an auntie or an uncle or a granny. And so they were not the favorite players, right? Anyways, I quickly realized that, much the same as my life, that they were there because they needed this. And they were there because they needed an outlet. And it was on me to be able to teach them so how do I do it? Well, I could be a gruff hockey coach and yell and scream and do all the old school stuff that you see, or I can relate, kind of the upbringing that I had. I had a player at one point on that team who we were playing a game, and he got checked hard into the ice, and he got up. I always taught discipline, right? It's we'll win the game. We don't have to win that or fight that way. Anyways, he came to the bench, and his guardian at that time. I turned my attention this way down the ice, and his guardian had come into the bench and started beating him.
Wow!
And so I got involved, and so we got the guardian out of the bench, and we kind of guarded our player. And so these are 15, 16-year-olds, very impressionable at that time.
Absolutely.
And when we went to the dressing room after the game, which we won, by the way, I was worried about him going outside. And so we went, myself and another member of the Hockey Association went outside. And that guardian was very abusive, wanted to fight, and we were worried about where that player was going to go back. And so I spent a lot of time with the player that night. We had an intervention in terms of the guardianship. A very long-winded story, but I became a friend and a mentor to that player, as I have with many of my players. And his life could have went very differently. It was about 5 or 6 years later, maybe 7 years later, I saw him at a local restaurant, and I said hi to him, and I interacted with him along the time,
Mm-hmm.
and he brought his wife over, his new wife over, and he introduced me, and he said, "This is the man who made me who I am today."
Wow.
Now I spent he's the reason why we have what we have. He's the reason why I went through and did the things that we do. This is the guy. There's no greater. I've coached people that have gone on to win Stanley Cups. I've coached, people that are in the NHL and all over. But that is probably the greatest compliment, because his life mirrored a lot of what my life was.